Alright, so back onto the bench and we're going to paint the wall. So for this I have just set up the wet palette, as you can see. So the colours we have on there are a Vallejo light grey, a deck tan, a stone grey, which is a fantastic colour, a pale sand, and lastly a German camo beige. Alright, so obviously you can get these in other ranges as well. AK I think sort of mirror a lot of Vallejo model colour ranges, but obviously I've got quite a few of them, so I'm just going to use what I have until I can change over when I've run out in about 20 years time. So what we're going to do is obviously we want sort of a concrete effect, which I presume this wall is made from, with a stone sort of effect. So old flat brush, and I've also got just my standard number 6 AK synthetic brush. Now, the trick is that I'm going to do, or not really a trick, but is to keep the paint really, really thin. You're going to kind of be wet blending. So this is just going to be the first stage, and then the next stage will be sort of the stippling effect, which will be obviously taking paint on this brush and then just literally just flicking it on randomly just to give that sort of mottled effect. Not too bothered about obviously the pavement this time. That's going to be different anyway, and like I said, we're going to tackle the actual properly groundwork after with more pigments. I think is probably the way I'm going to go, but again this could evolve, so we'll do one part at a time. So what we'll start with first is just a bit of the light grey, and I mean this is light tinted water. Alright, and then what you do is just dab some on the top, then just clean your brush, unload a little bit, and then literally just dab it in. Okay, and then we'll take some of the deck tan, same thing again. You can be really haphazard with this. Let's say you just wet blending, getting an effect. Yeah, a bit of beige, a bit of the stone grey. And because this is so thin, what will happen is it will just blend into each other. Alright, and then really just let it dry off. And then if you want, you can obviously highlight, you know, if you want a bit more illuminated, say this front corner here, which I've kind of done. Let's see if I can show you that. As you can see, it's slightly illuminated on that front corner. And again, these are effects, but because obviously you're over the Tamiya base coat, you're just sort of filtering, or you are filtering, should I say. So again, we'll just take this end one, take a bit of light sand, so I think, oh god, that's too much there, but again, just unload your brush, damp it out, and then just blend in. Keep this hand there, try and keep that in shot so you can see. Okay, and just blend that out with the water, and again just take a bit of the grey over the top and all the other colours. You can just sort of get some really nice texture and effects on there. So next step, what we're going to do is the speckling technique. So this is going to add more texture than what we've got. So again, same palette of what we've been using. As you can see, it's looking a bit messy now, but that's fine. We're just going to create a load of really thin, I suppose it's more of a filter. So as before, we had really thin paint when we was painting up on these top bits. We're going to do the same again. So mix and match, wet your brush. Okay, just take some paint on the end, get your cocktail stick, and there's nothing more than just flicking the end of the brush onto the pot. So okay, there we go. So again, if you use this quite thin, keep the lighter stuff at the top, and so on and so forth. So just remember, just unload your brush again, paper towel, all that, like what we've been doing before. Right, you've probably seen me do this when I've done obviously mud splatters. It's the same sort of technique, and it just makes it all a nice random build up a texture. Okay, also if you really want to, obviously you can mask like I've just mastered. I don't want it going everywhere, but you can mask individual panels out, so you can obviously brighten up, darken down, whatever you know, whatever you feel like doing with it. But this sort of gives that concrete effect then. I'm not overly worried about these sort of panels here because they are covered up on the actual box art with a lot of posters that you get. So again, we just gently build this up. Take a bit of the grey. I'm sorry I can't get my palette into shot, but I'm just mixing and matching colours here, so there's no exact science to it. Again, you could do this with oils, enamels, if you so desire. I don't think it really matters. It's just obviously I've got the acrylics on the palette, so I'm saying because it's so thin, even if it looks strong, when it's flicked on, it soon fades back down. So it is a bit of a messy exercise, to be fair. So I'd say if you like a clean workbench, I'd just suggest you cover that up. I'm doing a new cutting mat, so I'm not actually that bothered for once. Again, so as you can see, we're starting to build some texture up. You can go as far as you want with this. You can also change the colours out if you want a bit of a darker grey or browny tone. You know, once you keep it within the, even blues I suppose would work. If you've got not like a bright blue, but sort of a grey blue, that'd work as well. Any big spots like that, just get your damp brush and just blend them in. So again, just think of it as a process. Of like what you know, you're building stuff up on the top. So I'll carry on, get this done, and then what we're going to do, we're going to come back in with oils, which is going to be probably my favourite, which is sepia. I'm going to start sort of highlighting and adding some shadow tones. So we'll just get a bit of an oil palette going, and then we can just sort of, you know, like I say, just emphasise some of the shadows. And then also what we need to do is obviously where this part's missing, like at this top, around here, and perhaps some of these larger sort of missing parts, we need to highlight them with a nice light colour, which really is going to be very bright. Looking at it, you've got to look at chipped concrete before it sort of weathers down, and how, even stone, and how bright it is. Again, it's just adding contrast. So time for a quick catch up of what I've been doing. Alright, so off cam, as you can see, I've been doing some work on the wall, just some chipping work, obviously where there's parts missing, just again using the same colour palette of what we painted these top bits in, but we just used the pale sand colour just to add some sort of chipping and wear, as you can see on there, and also like some scratches and stuff. This was all done with a brush. If you're not comfortable with a brush, obviously you can use the sponge technique for doing the chipping, which works just as well. I've also, again, same colour palette of painted in the paving slabs and the curbstones. I've gone for more of a grey than the sort of the buff tones, I suppose, deck tan. But again, they've all been mixed together, just using what was the Tamiya base coat as a guide, and then just putting filters on. So nothing really spectacular, but it just makes the pavement pop, I suppose, and separates it from the groundwork. Again, as you can see, the little green bits, all that is dried seagrass, little clumps just picked up with a tweezer, white glue, and just placed into situ where I wanted them to be. That was done obviously when I was laying down the sort of texture for the road, and then that was primered in. Again, that's just pulled out with a bit of olive green or medium olive Vallejo, and then I might go over it and just lighten it probably with a bit of a yellow green or a lime green, one of them sort of colours, just to hit the tips, just as a bit of colour. So little bit of work on the road again, same colour palette, just brightened it up a little bit. But again, I'm kind of working out where I'm going with this, as in I don't mind actually as it is. It needs a bit of a wash in these sort of recesses, which is, I've got my oil paint little palette here, so that's just a pale flesh, sepia. One of them sepia's been on here, and the other one is Starship Filth. Again, I'm going to pick out, just do like a panel wash, or a pin wash should I say, just around to emphasise the shadows in these parts. And yeah, really that's where I'm at so far. So I think next bit we will do the pin wash. Like I said, we'll darken these recesses off where the tyre tracks are, and again around where I've just said, and then we'll reassess then where I'm going, whether I am going to cover it with pigments, which is possible. I mean, this is obviously the Land Rover in situ, so what you do see is sort of these front bits around here. I'm not obviously going to overly bother with the back, you're not going to see it. Again, I'm in two minds. I think we'll see. I don't know whether it's going to bring something to it or not with the pigments, but again, I suppose the plus point with pigments is obviously it does look dusty, which is obviously what you want this to look like. The only dilemma I've got is I've got a blank space here. Now what I was going to do was, which I've kind of changed my mind because I don't think it's going to work, was kind of put a vending machine, and a worn vending machine, but then why would there be a vending machine there? So my other option is I've picked up a set of more Masterbox figures, and I'm thinking the dog and perhaps a couple of the children sort of stood looking what's going on would be my other idea. Again, I'm in process of working out really what I'm going to do with that space. It's a bit of a blank space, so yeah, we'll see. But no, apart from that, yeah, we're getting on with it. We're cracking on. So again, I've got to super glue these guys into place at some point because they do keep moving. So they actually, especially this one, the other one's pretty much stuck in, but this guy here and sticking down. So we'll get that out of the way, and we'll get the oil palette set up. We'll do a bit of pin washing. So moving on to pin washing, something you've seen me do before, so just quickly go over it. Got me white spirit in here, obviously I've got me oil paints here, which this one is sepia, so I'm just going to be lazy and mix it on this, on the cardboard, and then obviously these recesses here where the tracks are, I'm just going to brush some of this wash in there. Again, you can use enamels if you're more comfortable with enamels, or even acrylic wash. Really, I suppose it makes a difference, but I like the oils. You can just more controllable, and if you don't like them, you just wet them and rehydrate them with white spirit and get rid. So what that's going to do, as you can see, is just deepen those. Again, add a bit more contrast. And again, you can adjust the intensity to your liking. To be honest, we're on a steaming hot day here, and this is probably going to be better on a palette. It works okay, these oils, when you're doing it like this, when it's not so hot, but really be better off in a metal palette, or these little little mixing trays. But yeah, I'm going to have to work a bit faster today. I'm going to just work in small segments because it is drying rather quick. If you can hear that noise in the background as well, that's my fan going, just to try and get a bit of airflow in my room. So hopefully it's not too loud on the mic. So there you go. So anything you kind of want to emphasise, like say just any recesses, or as in this case the tyre tracks, then it just obviously pulls the shadows back in. Let's use the palette. So camera back round. Emphasize these sort of recesses at the top. This is going to be more of a stain, I suppose, than a pin wash, but again, it'll just bring the highlights forward, and as I say, the shadows back. So, which is what I'm after. Bits you don't like, you just blend in, can make streaks or sort of stains. To be honest, I can't stress enough, if you haven't got a sepia oil paint in your sort of paint collection, I would advise you to buy one, whoever brand it is. It's such a useful colour. It's just sort of one of them universal colours that just works with a lot of colours. It's good for armour, aircraft, ships, whatever. It's it is just a great shade. The other thing that's helped as well, obviously, this had a black primer base coat before I started painting it, so obviously that's just sits in the recesses, so you get a natural shadow anyway, which is kind of what's happened. I'll just show you that with the paving slabs. But again, you know, if you paint differently to me, then obviously a wash then will separate those as well. Drop a little bit in there, in between the curbstones. So there you go. Just added a little bit more contrast and separation. Again, really brings the piece to life. So, like I normally say, carry on, get the rest of this wash done, and then pretty much we'll come back. I think we'll have a look at the pigments, see if they are going to work. What I'll probably do is just try a little bit in one of the sections that you're not going to see, just for me to see if they're going to work. Okay, these are, you really want these on last anyway. Obviously I've still got to frame it, which will probably, like I say, just some balsa wood, seal that in with a bit of white watered down PVA, and then paint that black. So that needs doing. Pigments will be on last, and then we'll come back and pull it all together. So I will catch up with you in the next part.